Okay, I'm going to talk about layers. I've just opened up AutoCAD. I've got my grid, which I like to turn off. Down here just below the command line. Left click that to turn it off. I like to turn off the view cube. Comes up as a default. And I can type in nav v cube. You've probably noticed when you start typing something that it gives you some choices up there, which you can select. You don't even have to just start out spelling it right. And I can choose to cut that off so I can kind of clean up my screen a little bit. And the default is to bring up the layer 0. It's not good to draw on layer 0 because there's a lot of things that you can't do with it. If I look at this little drop down, I can see that layer 0 right now is the only one that I have. But if I left click on this little button right here and it says Layer Properties Manager, it looks like a bunch of sheets. Paper, it's supposed to resemble layers, and if I left click on that, it brings up this layer dialog box. And right now I only have one layer. I do have other options, which like I said, even layer 0 has some of these options, but you don't generally use those with layer 0 because like I said, it's a layer that's used for some different things that we're going to talk about later. But up here at the top, you'll see if I get close to that first one, then I can create a new layer, and that says layer 1 is the default. And then, of course, the next one I'll create will be layer 2, but I'm going to make this an objects layer. And I'm going to change the color to something other than white. If I left click right here on continuous, then I can see it shows me the layers that have been loaded in my layer dialog box. I do want to use a continuous line type, which is a solid line, for my objects layer, so I'm going to click OK. And I'm not going to change any of these other defaults either. I'm going to create another one, and I'm going to make this a centerline layer. I'm going to change that to another color, and then I'm going to change the line type to a centerline line type. I don't have that loaded yet. I'm going to click on load, and I'm going to look for it. You're only going to have to do your layers one time. Gives you 3 choices, but you want to choose the first one. Click OK. Now that loads it in the dialog box, but it doesn't select it. So I'm going to click on center to select it and click OK. Then I'm going to click on this little dialog box again to create another one. I'm going to make this one hidden. Choose another color. Now a reason for choosing different colors for different layers is because as soon as you see that color, you're going to recognize that you're on the right layer. Left click on center, and this time I'm going to load hidden. I'm going to choose the first one in the choice. Again, that loaded it in the dialog box, but it didn't select it. I'm going to click on hidden, click OK. Create one more layer. I'm going to call it viewport. We're going to talk about viewports in a few minutes, probably in the next video. Click on the color, change that color. I don't care what colors you use for your layers, but just be sure to use colors other than white. Click on hidden. Line type really doesn't matter on the viewport layer, but I'm going to choose continuous. And for the viewport layer, I don't want the viewport layer to print, so I'm going to click on that so it can change that to a do not plot layer. Now if you see some of these other icons, you can delete a layer, you can freeze a layer in a particular viewport. We're not going to work with that one. But you can delete a layer, and I'm going to create a new one. And then I'm going to decide to delete that one, so I'm going to click on that X and it'll get rid of that layer. If I want to make one current, and when you make one current, that's the same thing like in manual drafting. If I decided I wanted to draw a blue line, I would get my blue pencil. Well, if I decided I wanted to draw a hidden line, then I would choose the hidden line layer, and then I would choose this check mark to make that current. If I were getting ready to draw, then I could choose my object layer and make that current. So whatever layer is current is the one you're going to be drawing on. I'm going to change that back to the centerline layer just to show you what this looks like when I get out of this box. See, right now my centerline layer is current. Well, I'm going to choose this drop down. I'm going to make my objects layer as current. So when I get ready to draw a line, then I'm drawing on my object layer. And I'm getting ready to draw a center line this time, so I'm going to make that one current. I'm going to use my line command again. This time I've drawn a center line. Choose this drop down again, choose hidden, choose my line. This time I've drawn a hidden layer line. Now if I decide that one of these lines is on the wrong layer, then I can choose that line and go up here and choose the layer that I wanted it to be on. And it chooses not only the color of that object layer, but also the line type too, so it changes that line to the one that you wanted it to be. Now looking at this drop down, if I look at the different options that I have, I've got a light bulb. I don't have a center line drawn, so that's not going to really do anything, but let's click on the light bulb for the hidden. And then just scoot this out of the way for a minute. Notice that it hid that hidden line that I had drawn, but it also is giving me a warning because not only did I hide that one, but if I continue to draw on the hidden line layer, I won't be able to see anything because it's actually turned off. So it gives me a warning box. The current layer is turned off. So I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to look at this drop down again, and this time I'm going to turn it back on, but I'm going to choose the one beside it, which it looks like a sun, but when I click on it, okay, it's not going to let me change it, I guess, because it's my current layer. So let me change that back to an objects layer. Click on that drop down and then click on that again. This time it's not the current layer, and that changes to blue. So not only does it hide that, but it freezes it. So if it's hidden, it could still be erased, but if it's hidden and frozen, then not only can you not see it, but you can't erase it either. Click back over here, unfreeze it. This time I'm going to lock it. Click on that little padlock. And it changed to a not as bright blue. And if I get close to it, I'll see a little padlock. So I can try to select, or it does let me select it, but it will not let me erase it because if I look down here in the command line, it tells me that it was on a locked layer. So you can see those are just some different things, and I'm going to go back and unlock it. Those are some different things that you can do with layers. You can also open the layer dialog box by going to Format and Layer, and it brings up that same layer dialog box that we brought up before. You can see that all my layers are loaded here. And if I got ready to do another drawing, let's say that this one, and I'm going to name it as Lab 3. Let's say that I finished Lab 3 and I've saved it and I'm getting ready to do Lab 4. So I open up Lab 3, rename it Lab 4, and then erase what I drew for Lab 3. Now I've got a clean drawing with all my layers that I can use for Lab 4. But just be sure that you rename it, or else you're going to erase your Lab 3 and draw on top of it. I'm going to undo to bring back part of that I drew. I'm going to review your plotting. This is also discussed in your list of commands for this week. It does tell you how to plot. So we've been drawing on the model space, which is supposed to be indefinitely large, so that you can draw something as large as you want to, but also beside it were these other tabs, and they are tabs where you can, they're called layout tabs, but this is model space, and this is called paper space because this is normally what you'll see that you're going to print on a piece of paper. So if I left click on that, then it brings me up to what looks like a sheet of paper, And then it drew a little box around it. Well, this box is your viewport. And if I click on it, then I can see my current layer was objects. But I really want that to be on a viewport layer because I do not want to print a square around my drawing. So now I recognize that as being on my viewport layer, and if I got ready to print, then that little box around it would not print. Now I can also click on this, and as soon as I click it, it becomes red. That little blue grip becomes red. And I can resize that and make it bigger if I want to. I just left click on it and drag it, and then make it a little bit bigger if I want to. Now, even though I see what's on my drawing, I can't actually choose anything at this point because I am in paper space and I'm only looking at what's in model space as if I was looking through a window, you know, through a glass here. If I wanted to reach in there and touch that, then I can double click, left double clicking inside the window, or I can click this tab over here and toggle over to model space. I don't know if you noticed, but the border around your drawing became a little bit darker, a little bit bolder than it was before. And now, if I select something, it's as if I've raised the window, that glass in the window, and then I can see what's in there. So I'm going to hit escape. But this is what you will print. And I want to talk about scale briefly, but I'm going to talk about this a lot more. So as long as I have that toggled over to model space, I can right click in this gray area and go to AutoCAD and look for viewports. And it opens up a little shortcut dialog box. And as long as I have that viewport selected, and if I happen to be toggled over to paper space, then I would need to choose it to select it and look at this drop down, and I'm going to choose 1:1 and watch the screen, see what happens. And that changed that to a 1:1, and you can see that doesn't quite fit on a paper very well. I'm going to pick 1:2. Then I can keep on selecting scales until what I've got drawn fits into that piece of paper. Or I can use that drop down and I can see some other scales that look more familiar to me, like for manual drafting. 1/4 inch equals a foot, makes that really small. 6 inches equals a foot, makes it bigger. Or I can also use 1:2, which I chose a while ago, so I'm going to use 1:4, and it changes that. And we won't talk about this at this point, but you might notice that I can't see the dashes in my hidden line construction, but that can be fixed later. So if I'm done with this dialog box, I can left click the X, or I'm just going to go ahead and show you how this is ready to be plotted. So I'm going to do File, and I'm looking for Plot, a little over halfway down. And it brings up a plot layout dialog box. And anytime you're getting ready to plot a drawing for the first time, it doesn't have the plotter set up. So use that drop down and find the plotter. Mine happens to be an Office Jet. And in the Office Jet, you can only print 8.5 by 11, so it goes ahead and sets up your paper for you. I can save that if I want to. If I'm ready to plot, I can click OK, but it's always advisable to look at it first, so to preview it. Be sure that looks the way you want it to look, and you can see that now my dashes do show up. Notice that my viewport border does not show up around it. And if I'm ready, I could go on to plot, or I could exit out of it, and I could go ahead and save my printer and cancel out of this. And if there was something that I wanted to change, maybe I wanted to change my viewport scale, I'm going to change that back to 1:1. Then I'm going to go back to File, Plot. See, my printer stays the same because I saved that. I'm going to go to Preview. Be sure it's what I want to look like if I'm ready to print. then I can hit plot. If I'm not, then I can just exit out of that. And if I'm done with this, I can exit back out of that. You might notice there's a little arrow over here. Anytime you have a little arrow like that in a dialog box, you can click on it and it brings up some other options, which you can change the way that it's plotted from landscape to portrait. And we won't talk really that much about the rest of this, so I'm going to left click on that to change it. I'm going to cancel out of this because I don't want to print it. Got some other commands that I'll talk about in the next video.